Back here in Nigeria, election is over in Ondo State and a winner has emerged. The incumbent governor, Aiyedatiwa, won the poll with a total of 366,781 votes to defeat Agboola Ajayi of the People's Democratic Party, who scored a total of 117,845 votes. The candidate of the ZLP polled 2,692 votes, while the Labour Party candidate had 1,162 votes. Now, Governor Aiyedatiwa has the mandate to serve the people for 4 years after completing the term of former Governor Akeredolu, who died in office on the 27th of December 2023. The big questions are whether or not governors would take a leap this time. Will it look like in areas of health, education, security, and others? How will he be able to carry everyone along beyond political affiliation in his 4-year term? Members of the All Progressives Congress in Ondo now describe his victory as well-deserved, an indication that is loved by the people across the 18 local government areas of the state. They expressed confidence that the governor will bring rapid development to Ondo.
It's fantastic. He showed overwhelming support, and it shows that the people of Ondo State love him. For this 10 months that he has worked, the work he has done, they say morning shows the day. You can see the jubilation and the expression.
Because for the first time in history of the state, we have an electionary process that is devoid of violence. We have an electionary process that is free in the true sense of it, and it is fair. It was one man, one vote, and we could see that currently in Ondo State, the atmosphere is full of excitement. People are happy.
About 5 days ago, as manifested, because we have a governor who is carrying everybody along, and we have a governor who is listening to people, and so with all those indices, I knew that he is going to win overwhelmingly, which happened today.
What he has done in the last 10 months is a testament of what we are expecting from this uncommon victory. Because this victory is uncommon in the history of Ondo State. Since 1999 to date, no governorship candidate has scored this type of vote. Our people.
Joining me now is governorship candidate in the ZLP governorship candidate in the Ondo election, Dr. Abbas Mimiko. Also joining me is Dr. Yusuf Haroun on the program. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Sounds like I have 2 medical doctors on the show. Thank you for joining us. Let me begin with Dr. Mimiko. The last time we spoke, you were quite confident about winning this election. It turns out your party got barely 2% of the total vote cast, 2,692. What happened, Dr. Mimiko?
Thank you very much. Well, we thank God Almighty, the elections have come and gone. A winner has emerged as Governor Lucky Mr. Aiyedatiwa. We of the Zenith Labour Party and I as the candidate, we've congratulated him. And we just got to move on. If you really want to know what happened, APC and PDP were in a bazaar of vote buying and selling because the polls we had going into the election gave us over 50% popularity rating with the people. But on day of election, it was open season for what we call buying and selling, but that's notwithstanding. I make bold to say that there was no widespread violence in Ondo State. We didn't hear of INEC converting 20,000 votes to 200,000 votes for any candidate. So my take is, if INEC served as an unbiased umpire, if the security forces, at least at the leadership level, lived up to their billing on the field, the police officers and the other federal agencies were busy witnessing what was going on without doing anything about it. But be all that as it may, the fact that the people came out on their own vote, now you can say they sold their franchise. In democracy, People's will is supreme. If they choose to sell their franchise, so be it. It's against the Electoral Act, but then it's of their own volition. So I have congratulated the governor, His Excellency Lucky Mr. Aiyedatiwa, and I prayed for him that he will lead Ondo State to a better place.
I hear you clearly, Dr. Mimiko. The issue of voter inducement has been widely publicized during this election. However, I'm looking at a document now from Yaga Africa, and I want you to speak to how prevalent you think this issue was, because the issue of secrecy of the ballots and attempts to influence polling officials, I'm looking at the percentage here. The highest to get is 12%. In some places, it's 11%. In other places, it's even quite lower. Are you saying that if money did not play a significant role, you would have won this election? How prevalent was the issue of voter inducement in this election?
Definitely, yes. If there was no inducement, we would have come out on top. But what I'm saying, in essence, is in democracy, the people's will is supreme. If the people decide to sell their votes, that's not my problem. Because at the end of the day, you can't really prove that the one that came to a polling unit and collected 10,000 naira to sell his or her vote, there's no proof that that person wouldn't have voted that same candidate anyway if no money was given. I'm talking legalistic now. But what I'm saying is, essentially, you will see me protesting if I knew that there was, say, brigandage, if there was the security agencies scaring people away or forcing them at gunpoint to vote for one candidate or the other, I'll be the first to lead a protest. But the fact that people came, killed, collected money, and voted candidate of their financial choice or whatever you want to call it, I have no problem with that.
Indeed.
There's no system that is perfect.
By the way, we have heard from the governor himself, who denied that his party was involved in any of these allegations. So we'll leave it as allegations since there are no proof as we speak. The DSS, I think, made an arrest in Akure in this regard. But there is what is called, let me talk to Dr. Haron on this matter. There is what is called the process and result verification for transparency methodology used by some observers in this election. I think Yaga Africa, to be precise. The findings from the situation room shows that the result announced by INEC for all the 18 local government areas are indeed consistent with their own independent tabulation. And then they went on to say voters should have confidence that the official result as released by INEC reflect the ballots cast at the polling units. What do you make of this?
Yes, like I said earlier when I was predicting this election before the start of the election, I said if majority of the people coming out to vote are satisfied with the current state of the government in Ondo State, then the governor is going to win the election. And if majority of the people in Ondo State are dissatisfied with the current state of governance in Ondo State, then another party will win and the current governor will lose. So from these statistics, which has come out from the election and from Yaga Africa's analysis, it appears to seem that more people who came out to vote are satisfied with the current government and they want the governor to continue his mandate. However, there is an ugly side to this election, and this is what I also mentioned before this election, and that is voter apathy. About 2 million registered voters, based on INEC statistics, registered for Ondo election. Out of that, 1.7 million collected their PVC, and now we are seeing a winner with average of above 300,000. And the second runner-up is barely above 100,000 plus. This is not healthy for a democracy. It shows that just 300,000 people in Ondo State determined the fate and destiny of people in Ondo, where there are millions of people for 4 years. I believe that we should look at the Western nation where we emulated their democracy. A good example is the United States of America, where I've been for several years, and where they just conducted their election on November 5, 2024, between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. we can see here that there were many people who came out to vote. It was peaceful, it was transparent, and the results were coming out easily. I was perplexed when I got the news that there was still ballot box snatching. And I'm worried why some people still have to snatch ballot boxes. Also concerned why INEC cannot develop a better means of technology where people can vote without snatching ballot boxes. Now that people are registered with the NIN and the BVN, it is similar to the Social Security number in the United States. I believe that coming election in 2027, INEC can link people's BVN or NIN together with their voters card in a way that each individual can vote either electronically, even through their phones. They can just send a text message, APC, PDP, and name all other parties, the 18 political parties.
I hear you clearly.
So that there can be more transparency. Yes.
Absolutely, Dr. Harrow. The issue of voter apathy is a big one in this election, and we'll be talking about that shortly after this break. However, to put some perspective to it, I think the total voter turnout, the total vote cast is about 508,000, and we're looking at 24.8% voter turnout in this election, perhaps the least since 1999. We'll be back with more after this break. ZLP candidate in the just concluded Ondo election. Also joining me on the show this hour is political and policy analyst Dr. Yusuf Harrow. Gentlemen, thank you so much for staying the course on the program. Dr. Mimiko, we possibly experienced the lowest voter turnout in your state since 1999, 24.8%, lower than 32.6% in 2020, and even lower than the average of 30% we recorded recently in Bayelsa, Imo, Kogi, and Edo elections. What do you think happened?
Yes, and this is extremely important to note. This level of apathy suggests something that is very unhealthy for our democracy. People are losing faith in the system. And we all know how the First and the Second Republic went down. And we just must do everything at leadership level to be responsible. People no longer believe in the electoral process. And those state people are very aware. They are decently educated. So if we have a scenario where Ondo State is turning out less than 25%, the whole nation ought to be on guard. That's where are we heading? Because democracy can only survive in a state of participation, popular participation by the masses of the people. Once you start having a scenario where people don't come out to vote, then we are heading for something that is not good. Look, if additional 500,000 people came out on Saturday, no matter the amount of vote trading that the people that came out did, there would have been the critical number to overwhelm it. So I want to encourage and I want to advise the leaders of thought in Nigeria that this idea of everything must go our way is dangerous for our democracy. We must, a state conducted an election, 18-0. It's good on paper. In reality, we need to interrogate whether it's healthy for our democracy. So let the leaders at the executive level, at the legislative level, at the judiciary, let them sit down and focus on things that will make this democracy survive instead of saying, I must win, I must win.
Dr. Harrow, what do you consider the implication of a dwindling voter turnout? Its impact on the credibility of whoever wins the election? And what do you think we can do to improve it in the future?
Okay, is that for me, Dr. Yusuf? Or
yes, that's for you. Please go ahead, Dr. Harrow.
Yes. Now, the problem of voter apathy, as I have discussed, is that people are losing confidence in the process. And this is unhealthy or it's unappealing. Also, I heard from some people when I took an independent survey, some people just said, well, we know that the current governor is going to win the election, so there's no need to come out. What we need to do, and what I'm encouraging or emphasizing, is that we can bring innovations to our electoral system. By what? By modifying the Electoral Act. And this definitely has to go through the legislative system, in which we can have electronic voting, not only on that day, just as it is done in the United States of America. You can even vote before. There's something called early voting, where you can vote even through your phone. Some people might not be able to come out to vote on that day. Probably they're on duty. Some people work on the weekends. Some people might be sick, but they may be able to still cast their vote. So I want to encourage or suggest to Independent National Electoral Commission to bring up the innovation, and also with the legislative arm of government, to see how we can have a form of electronic voting where people can vote just as you vote for things like Big Brother Africa, or you vote for all other things online or on your phone. So we can innovate this kind of system. I'm very, very optimistic that with this innovation, more people will come out to vote. Indeed. And there will be less voter apathy.
Well, INEC says we have to lobby our lawmakers to make that happen. By the way, the
Absolutely.
Commission has about 200 innovative bills before the National Assembly in this regard, but politicians seem to be stalling on them. But let us talk about setting agenda for the Lucky Aiyedatiwa administration. Thankfully, both of you are doctors, and they say he's only been governor for 10 months, so his capacity will really be tested in the next 4 years, and then we'll come back to see whether he can still win or his party can still win 18-0. But what do you think this administration must do differently in the primary healthcare sector?
Yes, I encourage the governor to focus primarily on healthcare and secondly also on welfare. I don't want to be biased as a medical doctor and also as a health practitioner where I am advocating for provision of healthcare services to people. But we should know that the healthcare index in Nigeria in general and Ondo in particular is below the World Health Organization standard, because the number of patients per doctor is declining, and this is also due to brain drain. So Governor Lucky Aiyedatiwa has to do a lot to make sure that many doctors in Ondo State, particularly in the primary health care centers, don't always want to move to another country like the United States, like the United Kingdom, where many of our colleagues are looking for greener pastures. Also, it should look into providing adequate security. Security is very important in the state. I'm happy to hear that Ondo State boasted as one of the safest states in Nigeria. So they should also look into healthcare, look into education, look into food. There should be a regulatory policy to make sure that the food prices in Ondo State and in Nigeria don't keep escalating. Because we know that there is no regulatory process that manages and looks into the price or cost of living. Indeed. I'm happy that the government are trying to look into the price of rents, house rents. They should also look into the price of food. Ondo State Governor Lucky, please look into the price of food so that marketers don't exploit the situation of, in quotes, hardship, and they are just escalating the prices of gari, rice, beans in the market, making life more difficult for common man to live in the state.
All right. Dr. Mimiko, quickly, what do you consider priority for the governor in the next 4 years?
Yes, thank you. I have taken it upon myself that I will give Governor Lucky Aiyedatiwa a small memo about things I think he could do to govern very well in Ondo State. Food security is essential. I think the supply side is where the problem is. You can't fix the price of food when the production costs are so high. Let government get involved heavily in food production. They should make it a cardinal policy. Health services, especially for children, pregnant women, the more vulnerable in society. Good water supply. By the time you get good water supply going, good food supply, good health services, education must be prioritized. A system will never grow beyond the level of its education. And then security, like my colleague said. And Mass housing is something I also advocate. But the governor, I think is someone who has listening ears. I'm going to try and approach him,
Indeed.
give private advice regarding
Dr.
that.
Mimiko, we have completely run out of time, but you had lofty ideas to share yourself while campaigning. Will you be willing to form a unity government, maybe work for him as a special advisor?
No, I would rather be a friend who advises him in a private capacity.
All right, we'll be here to report that if that changes. Dr. Mimiko, thank you so much for your time. Dr. Haroun, great time to have you on the program as well.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's our program today, everyone. You can watch a repeat broadcast at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye.